Congratulations to our most recent giveaway of the Spider-Man Far From Home hot toy, Robert Valderas III. To claim your hot toy, message me over on Twitter, and in the comments let me know what more giveaways you want to see throughout December to celebrate No Way Home. Now, let's get into it. Season 1 of Loki drastically helped to reshape the landscape of Phase 4 and set the pieces in motion that would eventually lead to the culmination of the multiversal saga that is set to arrive within the coming years. As a follow-up to the Infinity Saga, the Multiverse Saga has a monumental task ahead, which is following up the grandeur of the last overarching villain, Thanos. In the finale of Loki Season 1, we were introduced to a variant of King the Conqueror, who gives Loki and Sylvie an insight into the inner workings of the multiverse and what lies ahead. During their conversation, he pauses as a disturbance is caused. He regains his bearing and realizes that he is now outside of the bounds of the predicted future as he knew it, stating that they have now crossed the threshold. But seeing as neither Loki nor Sylvie did anything to cause this event, then what exactly is this elusive threshold? And what does it mean for the future of Phase 4 and beyond? Well, stick with us today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, as we not only walk through a few of the predominant theories as to what exactly this crossing of the threshold was, but explore the theory that the crossing of the threshold was actually 3 distinct events that all played a distinct role in awakening the multiverse of madness and the contribution that each event ultimately played. First, let's remember some of the key details about the crossing of the threshold and identifying some of its most predominant identifying characteristics that might give us clues as to which of these events in the Marvel timeline ruptured the multiverse. Thanks to the What If series, we know that splits on the timeline can happen at any point in history, from the adoption of Loki to the events of Captain America the First Avenger, and even well into the 21st century and beyond, as well as the fact that He Who Remains is viewing the timeline from an outside perspective beyond time itself. This means that even though the threshold was crossed before the birth of the multiverse and is widely implied to be the cause of the multiversal rupture, it can, in theory, take place at any point on the Marvel timeline. Therefore, time is not a constraint on identifying when this event took place. Another important note to consider is that throughout the What If series, the only overlap that we see between timelines was in the intentional will of characters who sought to navigate the multiverse. There was even an accidental crossing between the timelines, but more on this in just a minute. The first event, and one of the fan favorite choices to explain the threshold, is the birth of the Scarlet Witch at the end of WandaVision. In the comics, Wanda Maximoff is what is known as a Nexus being, who acts as an anchor point of her reality and is one of the most powerful multiversal pillars across comics lore. Many have speculated that the scene in which Wanda Maximoff is fully awakened and reborn as the Scarlet Witch at the end of her own series is the point that He Who Remains is talking about in the Loki series. And upon watching both scenes side by side, we can see that they are synchronized rather well, with the rumbles of thunder within Westview very closely resembling that which is heard in the Citadel at the end of time in Loki. Given the importance that Wanda is set to play in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, it stands to reason that she might hold relevance not only in navigating the multiverse, but in its very inception. The other predominant theory regarding the threshold is that the multiverse was ruptured when Doctor Strange botched the spell that would make everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Strange states in the latest No Way Home trailer that ever since the spell went wrong, they've been receiving visitors from other universes, which seems to largely hint that this might be the case, but we believe that there is more to it. According to this theory, the spell going wrong is not in fact the threshold that we see crossed in Loki, but is the next step in worsening the multiversal state. The popular fan theory in question proposes that since there is a distinct difference between the event that split the multiverse and the event that pierced the veils between realities, we know that the multiverse opened and led to various deviant timelines, such as the universe from the What If series. But again, never throughout the course of the series do we see these timelines collide with one another accidentally. The closest we see is Ultron traversing different universes of his own accord, and in Loki, He Who Remains reveals that the premier threat to the multiverse are the various kings from the infinite number of variant realities that are spawned as a result of the divide. He never says that the mere existence of the multiverse poses threats, only the individuals within it, and it's largely implied that different timelines can coexist without problems arising. And it's only when individual beings such as Kang or Ultron seek to pierce the barriers between realities that these problems arise. In No Way Home's latest trailer, however, it is implied that these villains are being pulled into different timelines accidentally, as Doc Ock does not recognize this iteration of Spider-Man and believes it to be his own. He seems to not realize that he is on a different timeline as of yet. But throughout the entirety of What If, nobody was pulled into another reality accidentally, and the original multiverse wasn't even discovered until the 31st century, which leaves us to wonder why accidental collisions are only just now occurring. This leaves us with the intriguing theory that there were not one, not two, but three separate events that overlapped in order to contribute to the multiverse calamity in their own ways. The first would open the timeline and allow the multiverse to grow and form new timelines, but these timelines would most likely be sufficiently separated from one another. If left untouched, they could theoretically go to the 31st century or later without accidentally colliding with one another. Since we see events of these accidental collisions in No Way Home, however, in addition to the support provided by both What If, as nobody is pulled accidentally into the other timelines, it leaves us to wonder why these barriers between realities are weak enough to be pulled into unintentionally. In turn, this would entail an event to weaken the veil between realities and make them thin enough for beings to cross over accidentally. And we propose that this was Doctor Strange's botched spell. After this spell is ruined, the layers are now presumably weak enough for accidental crossovers on different timelines that displace prominent individuals from across the multiverse, which would explain the myriad of misplaced villains in No Way Home. But so far, we've only covered two events that would break the multiverse. What is the third? The final event that would most likely have to collide with these two in order to create the problems that we are seeing is the nullification of the entity responsible for managing splits in the timeline, which is the TVA. The TVA has spent the entirety of their existence clipping the Nexus events and branching timelines in order to manage the flow of time. But with the death of He Who Remains and the crossing of the threshold happening simultaneously, the TVA was thrown into disarray as the multiverse was truly reborn, an event that couldn't even be triggered by Sylvie's bombing the sacred timeline and opening dozens of branching realities at once. In short, according to this massive Phase 4 theory, Wanda's rebirth as the Scarlet Witch opened the multiverse. Doctor Strange's botched spell weakened the space between realities and resulted in accidental collisions, and the death of He Who Remains crippled the entity responsible for stepping in and stopping all of it. And according to this popular fan theory, this will be the catalyst for the culmination of what is set to take place in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of this theory? Do you think this makes sense, or is there something that we missed? Do you think the threshold crossing was one event or several? And how do you think this theory compares to your own personal fan theories? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.